What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we are going over the tier 3 wide receivers, that being 7 through 16. Clearly, we have a lot of players to go over, so I can't go super in depth with each one, but by the end of it, you should have a good understanding of how we do feel about each player. And if you do want breakdowns that go into further detail on not just these players, but all draftable players, consider signing up for our draft package available at thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That's just one of many benefits that you get by signing up, and all-in access members are eligible for exclusive giveaways all off season long, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction. Use code FFA at sign up for a free $5 credit towards your first purchase. Even if you're not in the market right now, it's not a $5 credit at checkout. No, it's a $5 credit at sign up, so you may as well sign up, secure the $5 for free, because who's to say how long this exclusive offer will last for. With that being said though, let's hop into stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day: which running back led the league in evaded tackles? The correct answer, Joe Mixon. Congratulations, Scott D'Ambrose, you got this one right. As for today's stat of the day, which wide receiver had the best contested catch rate? Once again, that's which wide receiver had the best contested catch rate. Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. With that stuff out of the way though, let's hop right into the video. Coming in at wide receiver 7 may seem a bit egregious, and it's Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears. He finished last season as the wide receiver 11, and that was with piss poor quarterback play from Mitchell Trubisky. Mitchell Trubisky and Allen Robinson definitely did build off the chemistry that they started in 2018, but they really hadn't put it together until last season. And guys, last season was just a taste. It's very hard to imagine this offense stays as bad as it was while it was under Trubisky in 2019. If it does happen to fall down that pathway, Nick Foles, he is going to be the starter. Nick Foles, a more prototypical pocket passing quarterback who, if given the reins to start, is almost guaranteed to throw for more yards, touchdown passes, and be more efficient than that of Mitchell Trubisky in 2019. The signing of Foles is overall a good thing for bringing competition into the quarterback room as a whole, because without that fire lit under Trubisky, while we could expect much more of the same, which wouldn't be a total disappointment based off his 2019 production, but no, we can expect improvement. If Trubisky's not improving, Nick Foles is going to step in, and you best believe they're going to be putting the best quarterback on the field, the one that gives them the best opportunity to win, while simultaneously improving on the offensive side of the field, one of the biggest weaknesses of Chicago in 2019. As for Robinson as an individual contributor, he's amazing. His success rate versus many different defensive looks, it speaks for itself, but not only that, he had one of the better contested catch rates in the league, so even when he does face those tough defensive matchups, he's the type of player to be able to overcome that. So for us, Allen Robinson, while it is a bit egregious when compared to the other players in this range, he presents a unique combination of both upside and safety. He's not coming off of a down season, he's shown improvement in many major categories, while also being on an offense that's trending upward. Moving on to the wide receiver 8, that's Kenny Golladay of the Detroit Lions, and if you've been following the channel this offseason, you know we're very high on Matthew Stafford, who played as a top 6 quarterback while healthy last season, and we're expecting much more of the same in 2019. The best part about this selection though is that Kenny Golladay and his fantasy production is not reliant on the health of Matthew Stafford. He performed with both Matthew Stafford and the backup quarterbacks through the second half of the season while Matthew Stafford was out with injury. So if you're looking for a player in this range who may not have the same type of upside as others in the same area, Kenny Golladay is the type of player who you know what you're going to get from him, and even if Matthew Stafford does somehow go down with an injury, you know this is the type of player who can overcome that obstacle. He's coming off of back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with a minimum of 115 targets each. He's a big body receiver coming in at 6'4", 214 pounds, so he is a superior red zone threat as seen by his 11 touchdown receptions in 2019. We've seen him perform at a very high level consistently over multiple seasons, which gives us no reason to believe he's going to perform as anything less than a wide receiver 1 for this upcoming season. He's not necessarily a player who we feel like we must have him on our roster, but there's no way when the draft is all said and done that you feel bad about your wide receiving core if Kenny Golladay is leading your team. Wide receiver 9 may come as a shocker, and it's Odell Beckham Jr. of the Cleveland Browns. This is definitely a player I can see falling in drafts. Whenever you have a player that burnt owners the year before, you definitely have those same owners, the ones who drafted him that season, avoiding him for the upcoming season. Odell Beckham, he certainly fits that bill, but we've seen time and time again, guys, year one in new offenses, even the best receivers, they struggle. Odell Beckham, he is a superior talent in the league. Even think Jarvis Landry on that same team went from posting under 800 yards to boasting over 1,100 yards and leading this team in receiving. Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, you can't really compare the two talents. No, that's not a discredit to Jarvis Landry, but Odell Beckham, we can't forget exactly how talented this player is. He's one of the very few players that can take a slant route to the house. All he needs is a few yards of separation, and the chemistry between him and Baker is going to continue to develop, and there's a proven track record of a massive jump from year 1 to year 2 when tracking the production for free agent receivers. Allen Robinson, just over 700 yards. The following season, he's a top 12 wide receiver. You don't think Odell Beckham can make the same type of jump? I do have to claim recency bias there. And while we do have him ranked as the wide receiver 9, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to draft him there. That's just where we do project him out finishing when the 2020 season is all said and done. Moving on to wide receiver 10, and this is another player who you're going to be assuming a level of risk, and the player we have ranked here is Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. While Mike Evans is safe from a season-long perspective, there may be a bit of a learning curve when it comes to building chemistry with Tom Brady. Tom Brady not known for his deep passing ability, and that's the role that Mike Evans is going to play in this offense. We've seen Mike Evans disappoint in years past, and while we're not using this as a reason to not draft him, again, he's not an avoid player, especially not in this range, it may be the reason why we do have him ranked a bit lower than experts' consensus. Chris Godwin's role is going to be primarily from the slot, a role that Tom Brady has consistently relied on throughout his career, so the learning curve for Godwin versus Mike Evans, it's going to be different. Again, that's not to say that we don't think that they will be successful. We've seen deep threats play very well with Tom Brady, think Brandon Cooks, and Mike Evans does bring the combination of size and speed, something he hasn't really seen since Randy Moss. Wide receiver 11 is Amari Cooper of the Dallas Cowboys, and I have a feeling this Cowboys offense is going to be one of those offenses that you're just going to want to get a piece of. Typically, we're targeting CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup late in drafts just to get our share of it, but Amari Cooper is going to be one of those players that if you want him on your team, you're going to have to pay up for him. When all is said and done, you are going to see wide receiver 1 production from him, but don't forget, this is a player who has performed wildly inconsistent throughout his career, and while those concerns have been minimized while playing under Dak and for the Cowboys, in 2019, a successful season for him, he did still have 7 of 16 games under 50 receiving yards, and for me, that's just not typically acceptable for a wide receiver 1. Gallup was also banged up that season, there was no CeeDee Lamb, and while having these two talented receivers to help stretch the field may open up opportunities for him, we may see bigger peaks and valleys when it comes to his production on a week-by-week basis. Like I said, overall though, when the season is completed, you're not going to be disappointed with the production that he posted for your team. However, be careful with stacking too many of these types of players on one team, because in the playoffs, when it's win or go home, the last thing you want is for some of your top players to be posting duds. Wide receiver 12 is Calvin Ridley, and I know for some people it may be a tough pill to swallow. We're posting him before names like Adam Thielen, Juju Smith-Schuster, but we'll get to those players in a bit. Let's talk a bit about Calvin Ridley, who quietly was the wide receiver 16 in fantasy points per game. Yes, he is playing second fiddle to Julio Jones, but this is a high volume passing offense, and his target market share is guaranteed. Think Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster, both high-end wide receiver 1s. That's the type of upside Calvin Ridley brings to the table this upcoming season. They lost a ton of targets. Austin Hooper, no longer a Falcon. They lost 2 other wide receivers as well, and the only player they realistically brought in was Hayden Hurst, who has been getting some buzz when it comes to Matt Ryan talking him up about his potential upside, but we know year 1 on a new offense, there is going to be some growing pains. Austin Hooper in year 1 with Matt Ryan didn't really perform either. Calvin Ridley is going to be expected to play a major role and take a step forward, and the Atlanta Falcons are well aware of that. They wouldn't have felt comfortable with letting these players go without having the faith and the trust in Calvin Ridley. And the best part about Ridley is, no, you don't have to draft him as wide receiver 12. That's just where we believe he is going to finish. Wide receiver 13 is Juju Smith-Schuster, and I understand that a lot of people simply have him on a do not draft list. He's coming off of his worst season as a pro. He dealt with injuries as well as poor quarterback play, and that's very disappointing considering he was looking to take that major step forward, being the leader in this offense from the receiving game. Well, you're not necessarily going to be getting a draft day discount on him. Typically, when players do have bad seasons, it's followed up by a value on draft day the following season. We're not really getting that with Juju Smith-Schuster, so I can understand why a lot of people are a bit hesitant to take him for production we haven't really seen. But Ben Roethlisberger is healthy. Ben Roethlisberger also looks the most fit and athletic we've seen him since his early days in Pittsburgh. Juju Smith-Schuster has also put on significant muscle. Clearly, his offseason has been very productive even while nursing this injury, and we're expecting him to come back and produce in a major way. We can't forget exactly why we projected him so high in 2019, and to think that now the quarterback situation with Ben Roethlisberger could potentially be even better when it comes to his health and athleticism. And let's be honest, a year off for Ben Roethlisberger, while for most players, you could see that as a risk factor from shaking off some rust or maybe not having the arm talent after taking a year off. But Ben Roethlisberger is a veteran. He's going to come back, and while it may take a few games to get his feet underneath him, you'll be hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't expect Ben Roethlisberger to come back and produce at least enough production for one, if not two receivers to have very fantasy relevant seasons. For that, Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver 13, wide receiver 14, and that's hands down one of my favorite wide receivers to target in the early rounds, and that's Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings. This Minnesota Vikings offense funnels the targets to the wide receiver position, a wide receiver position that lost Stephon Diggs, a major contributor for several years now, and that loss is going to be majorly advantageous for Adam Thielen. Yes, they did replace Stephon Diggs with Justin Jefferson, but we're not expecting consistent production from Justin Jefferson, at least not in year one. While we do think Justin Jefferson does make a great late round pick, Adam Thielen is going to be the main chain mover, the one that you can rely on consistently as early as week one. Yes, he did deal with some injuries last year, but that was the first season that he had actually dealt with injuries throughout his entire career. Prior to that, he had played in 16 games in every season as a pro. Would it surprise anyone to see Adam Thielen in the top 5 for targets? No, it shouldn't surprise anybody, and this is also a team that has a potential holdout from Dalvin Cook. While many people may be quick to attribute a holdout to Dalvin Cook as a hindrance for the offense and being able to push the ball downfield, they're going to have to rely much more on the passing game if they do not have Dalvin Cook ready and available. Alexander Mattison should be able to step in and fill that role, but we saw in seasons past when they didn't have Dalvin Cook, the passing volume overall increased dramatically. So Adam Thielen, he may not have the most upside in this range, but undeniably, he is one of the safest picks you can take, and if you can land him as a high-end wide receiver too, you're going to feel really good about your team once the draft is completed. Wide receiver 15 is A.J. Brown, and right now where he's currently being drafted, he does come in as one of the better values in the draft. He's definitely a target for us, and it's crazy to think how in most ADPs he's being drafted outside the top 16 after finishing as the wide receiver 15 in 2019. He did all that on just a mere 84 targets, and Vrabel and crew have been very adamant about getting him more involved and getting him more receptions. Not only that, they have been vocal about potentially using him as a returner on special teams. We'd seen in years past players like Tyreek Hill, whose fantasy value took a major uptick when being able to convert maybe 1 to 2 kickoff or punt returns for a touchdown that could dramatically impact your overall fantasy finish. The general consensus is that the risk is because Ryan Tannehill is somewhat unproven, but even if Ryan Tannehill's efficiency numbers take a dip, the chemistry that A.J. Brown and Tannehill can build upon from what they did in 2019 should more than make up for that efficiency. You're talking about a player who, if you give the ball to him and put the ball in his hands, he can make things happen. There are very few receivers in the league that have that ability. Think of all the receivers that have very limited upside when it comes to yards after catch. A.J. Brown is one of those players we talked about, like Tyreek Hill, Odell Beckham, who doesn't need a ton of volume in order to produce, and those are the types of players you want to bank on. The final tier 3 wide receiver we have is DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers, coming in at wide receiver 16. While we may be lower on him than experts' consensus rankings or ADP, that doesn't mean we don't think you should target him. In fact, we do have him as a target. However, some of the players we have ranked ahead of him, we just would prefer to have on our roster prior to taking DJ Moore. DJ Moore, similarly to Kenny Golladay, brings that level of safety when you know he is going to produce produce regardless of who is at quarterback. We've seen him produce with Cam Newton, albeit one of the less accurate quarterbacks in the league, and we've also seen him produce with a rookie quarterback, Kyle Allen, who down the stretch played wildly inconsistent and is still an unproven commodity. When banking on players early, you definitely want to bank on talent, and that's something DJ Moore brings to the table. And it's clear, the depth chart, he is the lead receiver on this team. It's a team that definitely could struggle defensively. They did lose Luke Kuechly, whose defensive impact cannot be limited to just his position as a linebacker. He was a leader, he called out plays for this team. If this defense does struggle to get up to speed without him, that could lead to more garbage time production, overall more passing volume, and if the passing volume does increase on this team, the number one benefactor is DJ Moore. Wide receiver 16, guys, but that's gonna do it. That is the tier 3 wide receivers, wide receiver 7 through wide receiver 16. Let us know your thoughts. If you did enjoy this video, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.